Okay.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Gordon. Good morning.
Welcome to the April meeting of fiscal affairs. And we're pretty sick. I'm the last one. So, welcome to the end of the critically discussion of the minutes. You have them before you. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Thank you, sir. Is there a second? All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye, please. All right. Any opposed? Any carries. So then we then call for follow-up on the issues raised during our agenda call, which I recall there being a couple. One more that's going to ask about the scope of the public statement for the cancer center. So I think we'll naturally pick up and have that discussion. So I don't think we need more about that. And you made a pretty comprehensive answer.
Yeah, well, I can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
And I think the question is, are we losing function? Generally, the question was, are we losing functionality with the actual stuff?
Okay,
I think the discussion about it, if I remember the readings right, about it, it's a phased project and all that. The answer, no, but you'll cover it, of course. And then we also want to talk about the demolition proposal or whatever we're looking for. The amount of money we're spending on demolition of the greenhouse, which I think we will match the 30% item also. So I don't think there's anything else on the agenda call there. Okay, so that takes us to the first read of the dates of budget, which I handed out. My role in this is to pass it to staff. We got probably can. I've done that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in front of you is a hard copy of the sort of the background information on the triangle. The background is something that was created 15 years ago in the legislature. It's the 1/8 sales tax for 3 very specific university projects. There is a 7-member board of directors, which is the authority, and they are going to meet next Monday morning to review the budget as well. So there's a sequence of steps that we follow. So this is that first step in that process for the fiscal year 2024 budget. And you can see that Peggy Dunn is the mayor, and she is actually right now the chair of the neighborhood authority. And they have on the next page, you can see some of the actual revenues from the three counties, how it's grown over time. We have had some more recent success with head revenues in Johnson County, and so HA Olathe, the University of Kansas Edwards campus, and the KU Med Center Cancer Center here, and they can answer your questions about what they plan to do next year with the days of revenue. We have several people online who can also answer. There are very specific questions about what. So for this month, this is only on our committee's agenda. Next month, this will be back after the authorities review, and it'll be on the full board's agenda.
Morning, you all.
Thank you. Appreciate the chance to present to you all today. I just want to go through, for the record, in case somebody online doesn't know who I am, my name is Wesley Winch. I'm Vice President for Administration and Finance. for Fort Hays State University, and I'm glad to share what I'm going to call the 3/4 year update at this point. And many of the numbers I've actually updated with 3/4 instead of mid-year. Wanted to start by talking about revenue type. So if you go to slide 2, which is about a quarter of our budget comes from the state general fund, about a quarter of our budget comes from tuition, and another quarter from our restricted accounts, and the last quarter is a mix of federal, auxiliary, and other revenue streams. So just kind of, you can see a little bit of where our revenues are coming from and what the revenues are. Going to the next slide, you can see what's going on with our FTE by residency. Over the last 10 years, our student FTE has generally grown, but in the last number of years, we've had some enrollment decline. And you can see that about 60% of our students are resident Kansans, whereas another 20% is non-resident and 20% are international. And 3 of the last 4 years, we've had record graduation numbers, and replacing 4,000 students per year is proven to be somewhat difficult for us. COVID has had an impact. We knew our China numbers would be down this year, and we planned for that. And we're working very hard to turn this enrollment trend around. Some good news, our retention rates this last fall went up 3%. So some of the things we're doing on campus are having an impact on our retention numbers. But the trend is that the enrollment is declining. And if I were to add another year on this, if I were to tell you what 2023 looks like, it would be down again. And if we're projecting for the future for 2024, we do think that it's going to be down again in 24, but not as much. We think the decline is going down, but reducing the velocity of the decline. We're hoping to turn that around and get that turned around by 2025 is kind of what the projections are looking like. We hope we can. We're trying. So if you look at the next slide, it's credit hour production. It's the same basic story as the FTE. There's really not that much difference here because FTE and they're correlated. So you can see what's been going on with our credit hour production. And one of the nice things is next fall, I don't know how much to stock to put in really early numbers because it's super early, but our applications are up. I think everybody's is up though because of the number of things that happen in the market. So I don't know how much stock to put in the applications, but the one number that is a little more interesting is that our on-campus contracts for housing are up right now, and those are real signed contracts, and so that's a much more promising number for the fall. If that ends up following through in the way that we hope, we actually might not be down next fall, but it's really early to be able to say anything on that. So we'll keep watching that and hopefully get that turned the right direction. Yeah.
As you were looking at the out years, identifying as you have, projected these, what group are they in? National, resident, non-resident, where's the biggest decline?
The biggest decline. Actually, let me just show you that. If you want to go to the next slide, and you can kind of, well, maybe it's 2 slides in. We'll go 2 slides in, and then we'll come back. So go 2 slides in. It's the one that says FHA sources of tuition. You can see where our funding is coming from and where our declines have been between online and on campus and cross border, which is our international people. And so our biggest decline has come on campus actually. And the fact that we're having contracts go up, those would be on-campus students, so that hopefully we can get that turned around. But that's the answer, and you can see here on this slide, where it's coming from. And if you were to look at, if I were to add 23 on here, because 23 is not done, but if I were to add 23, we would see a little decrease in the online as well. You'd see that starting to dip down. So yeah. Okay, go back one more, back to what we commonly call the scissors chart. This just shows the sources of funding from state versus tuition. And you can see that we crossed where tuition became more than what the state was funding, and it's starting to dip back closer together. Once again, if I were to add one more year on this, 23 The state did increase our funding fairly significantly in fiscal year 23, and we're continuing to lose tuition. And so those are going to come much closer together for the next year. And that's just that's what it's going to look like. So man, why not? It might be some sort of I don't know, fish or I don't know. That's kind of the story on the revenue side. You know, our state funding has remained relatively flat, where our tuition has been going up, and we've had good enrollment growth historically, but our enrollment has been shrinking over the last 3 or 4 years, which has impacted our credit hour production and impacted our tuition revenues. And so we are working very hard to turn that around. I want to talk a little bit about the expense side, which would be the slide that point to expenditures by type. Yes, that one. You can see, you know, where our expenses are going. Most of it, the majority of it, just like every university, goes to salaries. It pays our people directly. We have a big chunk that goes to scholarship and helping make the university affordable for our students. And then our operating expenses and depreciation. And that's kind of where our money goes. If you want to look at the operating expense 5-year trend, which is the next slide, there's a really big jump in 2022, and that's a little bit of it did go up, but not quite as big as what this is showing. We had about a $10 million expense that was COVID related scholarship expense. And so you need to back out the 10.6 million out of that 153 million number. So really apples to apples is more like 143. And that was a pretty big jump. And the reasons for that were salary related, software and general inflation and software, some of our enterprise resource systems, and student recruitment, marketing, and retention initiatives to try to turn this around. Our tuition thing. And we've done some things since then. We've cut about $2 million off in salaries and payroll since in 23. So we're hopeful this will turn around and be a little better for next year. But our expenses did jump in 2022 comparatively, and we've got to watch that. You're looking at me kind of.
You're contemplating salary increase.
It may go up. We're hoping to at least keep it flat.
What are your actions?
We cut $2.1 million of salary expenses for this year. So that should offset some of the salary increases. We've reduced the position. Correct.
Well, don't be discouraged on that.
Yeah, so that's, but yes.
Do you have your somewhere an annual expenses for this revenue, this bottom line? How much more and depending the revenue or how much less?
I don't think I have that on this exact chart, but for historically, I have a chart for this year, the 3 quarters, and you'll see this year what our revenues versus our expenses are and how we're doing on budget for fiscal year 23 through the end of March. And you'll see it a little bit in the CFI when we get there, because the CFI will show you the operating margin of whether we've been above 0 or below 0. So that kind of gets to it.
So the related chart would be a reserves chart as cash reserves, and if you're spending more in a particular year than the opposite. One way to make that is to reserve, right?
That is correct.
And you have a reserve chart to show how the reserves behave over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
I don't have it here, but I can tell you what that has been. So our reserves are a little over 30 million. And last year we lost $2 million in our cash reserve. And the year before that, we lost $1 million. But the year before that, we gained 5 million. So if you look at the last 5 years of data, our cash balance has actually gone up $2.8 million over the last 5 years. But the last 2 years, we have lost about 3.
So when you say what is turning the criminal law in the I called my mom this morning and I said, thank you for every 70 years. You've been possible.
37 years, please.
Yeah, and that was what you do, right? So the cash reserve issue, when you said that you were down to million, that's really because you made a conscious choice to engage in that expense.
Right.
And that choice was rational because you had $3 million worth of reserve.
That is correct. However, that we've got to make sure we don't continue just going on that track.
So I would encourage all campuses to include historical chart of reserve. I think it's really important for us to see everybody to see what happened to those reserves. How long, for example, do you go if you're spending spending plan $2 million? So thank you.
Yeah. So if I were to go to the next slide here, debt service, you can see where our debt service is. We spend about $3 million on debt service a year. That represents a 1.9% debt service ratio. So pretty low. Overall, our debt is about 34 million and going down. So that's where we stand on our debt. We really have I have no worries that we're going to be able to meet our debt obligations at all. We're doing just fine on our debt service. The next slide shows what I would call a 3/4 year update. So we get to see our revenues versus our expenses for the year. And we're right on target on our expenses at 74%. And our revenues are ahead a little bit. We're not gonna get a lot more revenue on tuition and things for the rest of the year. So that's gonna, as the year goes along, it's gonna come down a bit. But we feel like we're on target in both areas to hit our budgeted targets for revenues and expenses for the year. If I were to look at the financial ratio, that we go to the CFI, you can see here that we took a dip this year. This year 22, we ended at 2.57. That was driven largely by we knew that big uptick last year was going to come down. There was no question. There was a lot of component unit did really well on their investments last year, and we weren't going to match that again this year. In fact, they went down, and that's the largest driver of what's driving that number down. However, went to your recent winter, to your point, you can see that our operating margins, those two bottom ones, were below zero, which means that we took a loss on our net operating, and that's we got to turn that around. So that's where we are. The other two ratios, the primary reserve ratio and the liability ratio, they're, I think, in pretty healthy places. So we've got to work to turn that around.
If I can, just to be clear, while it's important, I think for all of us to identify the trends with respect to spending, budgeting, et cetera. There's nothing here that concerns me. I think we have significant $2 million deficit against $30 million reserve is not kind of concern me.
Moving on, I just wanted to show you where our net position was, because even at the end of last year, despite the operating loss, we ended up having a net position increase. That's because we invested in plant and had other monies coming in that weren't operating dollars that helped us. So our asset base is continuing to grow, which is a good thing for us. In any time, it's to make sure that our asset base is healthy. That's where you get your revenues and your operations from. So that continues to grow. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about where we sit on tuition compared to our peers. So we are much lower than, as you guys are aware, we are much lower than any of our peers, and we have a really good value to our students. We feel like we provide a great value to the students of Kansas and to the citizens of this state and to all the students who come here. And we feel like we want to continue that. We think that's kind of a little bit of our identity and our strategic niche in the market, and we want to continue to be a great value to folks. And you can see that we're over $1,000 cheaper than our competitor in this pure assessment chart. If you were to go over one more, which is tuition and fees versus the MIAA, we're still, I think, the best value in all of Kansas. So that's kind of where we're at. And in summary, just kind of summarize it. Yeah, I think you do. Looking forward, I think we're financially sound. I don't feel like we're in any place where we're not financially sound. We are experiencing some headwinds. We're experiencing headwinds in our enrollment and our SEAs, and we're experiencing some headwinds because of inflation and the pressures on the expense side of things. And so what are we doing about that? Well, we're doing a number of things. We have a 13-state initiative that we're working on. We keep working on doing things that are moving and improving our retention. The NIST playbook thing, the strategic enrollment management. We got to continue advocating with the state to see if maybe they can help us with some extra funding. And we're going to have to look at raising tuition. I think we sit in the market in a good place. I think we're going to have to look at raising some tuition for next year to try to help with the revenues. And on the expense side, we cut some money, reduced budgets, we reduced some positions, and every position that comes up, we continue to take a deep look at and make sure that it's needed. And before approving rehires, we'll continue to do that. And we are going to have to continue talking about how to be financially responsible in the strategic and appropriate ways. And in fact, our budget committee is meeting now. Currently, we're in the middle of having those conversations. So that's what we will continue to do to make sure that we are financially sound. Questions? Yeah.
Kind of asked it last month, and it'd be more for money, and Blake sent out the article that's in the Wall Street about, what the perception is of value of higher education. And just using more numbers, and we looked at here, between state funding, tuition, estimated right on the graph, it's about 80 million. Others we're looking at 122 versus about 56 million back in 2009. Their article is 2013. We're now, if you look at your graph of tuition, you look at your graph of declining enrollment. There's a correlation. I mean, it appears to be a correlation between the two numbers. I mean, how do we flip this script of, making sure that people see the value of education, now and going forward. And then, unfortunately, all of these talk about increasing tuition. And a degree, for a student, a degree is a degree, even though there's inflation and all that you are dealing with as far as cost. If the cost of tuition keeps going up, or we keep taking the bigger hole in what is the perceived value of a 4-year degree. And I don't have an answer. Collectively, how do we, it's a nationwide problem, get that where also the value is back, even though the cost keeps going up.
That's a great question. We have had some pretty deep discussions this past week at KU on that topic. We've all talked about it as well. The Wall Street Journal graph here, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it's like 51% thought we were value in 2013 and 2023, 40-some% think we're value. So like a 10% drop. There's also the sort of demographic. What's that?
The students are playing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly. So they're seeing us of less value, and we're struggling across the country financially. And then there's a demographic cliff that we all talk about in 2025. It's already happened in the Northeast, but it's gonna happen in our area and in the rest of the country, starting in 2025. There'll be less people available to go to college, and the demographic mix is different. So the discussions we've been having, and I know Blake, I don't know if he's in here anywhere, but our CEO, Blake Flanders, you asked about, well, is there a price elasticity when you raise so much to people? So we've been looking into that issue. The issue is, if you keep doing what you're always doing, you're gonna go down. And if you keep raising tuition, you're probably gonna have a problem. The issue is doing things in your university through the NIST playbook and through the offerings we make, the classes we provide, knowing what the market wants and measuring the market, recruiting to what the market demands are. If you don't do that, it's going to get worse. So I think all of us are heavy into strategic enrollment management and asking those questions. And we had a huge discussion last week, all-day workshop on our Jayhawk Global product is, what does the market want you? What does the market want in terms of things? When I get a degree, I can get a job and I can make money off of it, as opposed to what do we want to teach? So, I mean, we could have a workshop on this, I think, or we could have a discussion over the summer, but this is, your question is what all of us stay up at night answering and making sure, like, we have a number we would like to raise tuition, but we would not do that because of all the things we talked about. And those are things that we'll be raising you in May. So I don't know if that helps at all, but it was a all week long discussion this last week at KU on this very topic.
I'm not sure there's an answer to somewhere there's got to be somewhere that we got to try to find.
You can't be what you've always been, or you will not get through this. I think it's that conclusion. You have to, we all have to pivot. If we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to go down that slide that you just described. And that is, what are you going to do different? That just one thing I think would be helpful. HLC, Higher Learning Commission, we're going through accreditation in 2025. And I was with a bunch of other KU folks at a workshop in Chicago for, there's probably 4,000 people there. And criterion 5 is the one that's about financial viability and planning, and the section before the demographer showed the cliff we're all going to start rolling down, because there weren't a lot of babies born in 2007, and you can't change that. That's just the way the world is. And 18 years from today, how many will be unless there's a migration? And his comment was, I'm the guy that's the final say on criterion 5. I am the person you appeal to. And I'm convinced most of you in this room, what's that presentation? You just think the world's going to end because you're not doing anything about it. And his comment was, if you don't do anything about it, I probably won't see you in 4 years when I do this presentation again. His comment was, you all need to take it seriously, that this is inevitable and this is real. And you need to either change the size of your university, or you need to change what you are and who you are and how you recruit, or those numbers are not avoidable. And whenever I go to your universities, many of you don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, what are you going to do? You're not going to, you may not be here. And that was a discussion at the Higher Learning Commission. So it goes back to your very question. What are we all? And we all talk, we're all doing things differently. He's trying to, bend the curve on his side, and they're doing things and investing in that. We're putting a ton of money in these areas to change that route for KU. And you'll see our strategic plan shows how we're using reserves to invest in those things to turn that picture around. And so there is his comment was, you don't have to fall off the cliff unless you don't do something. That was the comment to the whole session. That's from the Higher Learning Commission.
And I think about both of those comments, making me think back to state funding elements, right? The investment of the state into the academic labor work and the inflation work, gives us that short-term additional flexibility to both make those changes over the long run and to avoid. That's a fairly high increases to tuition rates that might even drive the perceived value lower. So it's critical that the state be our partner in kind of finding the best path forward.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to follow on something that you talked about, some of the things that you're putting money into, because it's kind of fitted together. Is that primarily in recruitment and retention and on just general?
It's recruitment, recruitment, retention, focusing where you're going to grow. And which programs you're going to provide more of, that the market wants. So it's, you know, just a number, if 1% increase in tuition is $2.4 million net tuition out of that. Retention is almost more valuable than recruitment, if you can, but you got to do things to make that work. That's our numbers, and so it's marketing heavier, looking at our aid packages we provide. It's about how we treat our students and make sure that they want to stay here. It's looking at the dining and housing experience that they have while they're here. It's looking at the programs you provide online that the market wants, not what you want to do. And all those things, we're really just massive all day sessions for the last month or so at KU as we structure our financial plan and budget to try to deal with everything that you just brought up.
Right. So I think thinking back on the demographics and reflecting in 2007, 8, 9, during the recession, the birth rate dropped pretty significantly. And typically after a recession, it comes back. It didn't come back in the same form that it did in previous ones. So we're facing this enrollment for 25 to 2028. And we talk about, as I think of reflect upon our institutions, we're all going to be fighting for a piece of a shrinking pie as we grow. And one of the things that I think is important is this playbook and others is retention. Our efforts in retention, I think we probably get a better ROI. I feel we've had a strategic enrollment management plan since 2017. We worked the plan. I think it's borne fruit, but our admission pipeline is already, you know, this size, and the reality is the water going through that is going to decline. So I look at it as how do we keep more water in the bucket as we get students in. And so in this political money, I'm hoping it still comes through. It sounds like that may not, but we'll wind up focusing our efforts on enhancing our retention efforts. We've done a lot of that. We'll all have to continue to do that because that's probably where we're going to get probably a better return on investment. Retention efforts.
Well, this is a bottom line issue. We kind of together, and I know you spent that time doing. We will know more about playbooks. But I think you're suggesting that the workshop at the summer you share it outside over right. Turn on to you. I think it's a good suggestion. Let's take that forward to the retreat line, and you all use that. More than that, so all right, okay, thank you.
I think back to 4A. You do multi-year strategic planning, financial strategic planning, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that is put together an effective budget. And then for each of those budgets, you look at which is most likely. You do that kind of forward projection.
I have 3 years in advance that's pretty detailed, and we have some kind of modeling beyond that, but it's not nearly as detailed as a 3 years in advance type of thing. So we're looking really far out, but there's so many variables that the 3 year projection is a little more real actionable.
Okay. Okay. So in the agenda call, one of the topical areas that came up for discussion was what have you reduced or what have you cut out in order to make the building in its current form that we're proposing as the revision to the earlier plan. And as a reminder, we had several years ago, we put this item on the capital plan when we were
fairly early on in our thinking about it. We wanted to get it in the queue. We wanted to start talking about it. We wanted to have it be visible to the board. At that time, it was a 450,000 square foot building and an estimated cost of $339 million. Very large project. And that represents the university side, which is primarily focused on research, of a even bigger building that would have with it a clinical patient care side that would be done and paid for and managed and operated by the health system. But cancer is such, and the state of the art with cancer research and care is to have both research and clinical programs tightly integrated. Clinical programs meaning patient care. And so when we developed the plan that led to the 450,000 square foot, $339 million building for the university, that was done, and the program for that, as it was at the time, was a result of a very detailed set of discussions with an architect helping this program between the health system and the university. And that was the university portion of the building. By design, we did that in a way that did not provide constraints to the cancer center people or the clinical people who were from the health system doing that planning with an architect. We did that because we didn't want to eliminate things right out of the gate, knowing probably likely it would come back more than we could do, and we would have to figure out a phasing plan or a multi-stage plan, or just not do everything. So that's sort of the backdrop of what we're comparing to today. And now in this revision proposal that we'd like to get your support for, we have spent a great deal more time with our team on the university side and with the joint team of both the health system and the university. And now people like me have gotten more involved because there is the reality of what we can afford to do. We have many other priorities as well. So now we are still contemplating a very large, very comprehensive building jointly to address both research and clinical work with the health system. But our university side of that building is now about 250,000 square feet from the earlier 339. And the cost is reduced from the, 250,000 square feet versus 450,000 square feet. And the cost is now approximately, we're estimating $250 million from the earlier 331. Primarily what we have done to reduce that, first, it is just the reality we can't afford. I don't want to take on the obligations associated with a building as big as the original one at this moment. So what we have done is gone back and reconsidered what can we pull back and still have a transformational sort of addition to our campus for cancer. And so we now have reduced clinical space, excuse me, I said that wrong. The health system is working on the clinical space. The university has reduced the amount of research space that we're contemplating in the building, both wet lab space, basic science research, as well as clinical research, patient-centered clinical trials and other clinical research, as one matter. And I'll come back and talk in a minute about phasing of this. But that's one important element where we have reduced space, especially in the original plan. We had a great deal of shelved space that was built in the building but not finished. Contemplating growth later, finish and a final version of it later. We removed some of that because we have to cut something. We can't do it all. We also had earlier planned on having our departments of biostatistics and population health, which are two of the departments in the School of Medicine that are very actively involved and collaborative in research, clinical research especially, to help manage studies that we are doing. And we had desired and ideally would have them all in the building, the new building, to work closely with the cancer research team. We have pulled those departments or their offices out of the building now. It would be a nice thing to have. It is not required to have. They are on campus. They're in another building on campus. So, and it's not far. It can be managed. It's not perfect, but it's a trade-off we're willing to make in order to produce a plan for a building that we actually think we can do. So that was another adjustment. And then finally, the other kind of headline level adjustment was with this building, we have contemplated and still contemplate inclusion of a vivarium. Vivarium is a animal facility that where you keep lab research animals, from mice to primates if you're doing depending on the kind of research you do. We don't have primates for cancer in our program, but you know, it's a full support for animals. Sophisticated building, sophisticated processes, highly focused on keeping a sterile environment and so forth, so we don't introduce disease, outside disease into research studies. We have an old, tired, frankly, worn out vivarium today on our campus. We need to replace that. So we're intending to replace that with our inside our cancer building that will support both cancer and other research on campus. We have scaled that back in size from what it was in the original plan and what it is now. And we have, so we've cut back the number, the size, the number of square feet of that component of the building, but have added back a portion of that cut in the form of shelved space for that vivarium animal facility. The net of all that is, and some other things, but those are the primary things I would highlight, is that we now have a building that's more manageable and one that we can do. A 250,000 square foot building estimated now at $250 million. So what we're contemplating, though, is that is the first phase of what hopefully would become a multi-phase project, where the university could build out some of the space that we're calling shelled or unfinished space for the vivarium, for example. And I think we still have some shelled space, though not a lot, for research in the building as it's currently proposed. But we would likely, in order to expand that, have to build another building. And there has been a lot of thought given to where do we put this building on campus so that there's geography to do that and ability to connect it. So, and there is by design, we would put, if we get to this, and we hope we do, we would put a new building immediately north of the existing building, which is right in the middle of our campus. And have it be connected with walkways that would connect the buildings, so they would be almost as if they're an extension of the same building. And then it also contemplates, for growth purposes, another building on the south side of this building. The building we're contemplating is a long I-shaped building. And on either end, we could put another building, and we have worked to plan so there's space to do that, and how we would do bridges between them and so forth. So that would be a future phase plan. And those phases, for the university at least, would largely be to add back the things we cut out to get to the point we are now. i.e. additional research space, perhaps add biostatistics and population health into the building via this new facility that would be connected. Perhaps increase the size of the vivarium animal facility. So the aspiration of what we want to do is still sort of remained as it was in the original plan. Now we pulled back some, though, for just fiscal reality, and but still could go back in a later phase to add those components at an appropriate time with an appropriate plan. We have not planned that in detail, but we certainly have contemplated it with the architects to make sure there's a way to do it, and there clearly is. And we've looked at other opportunities, and we don't think they're as sensible, but you can build buildings and then add on top of the building, make it go more vertical. Particularly in a building, it's a research building in a clinical building, that is very difficult because it's very disruptive and you have highly precise instrumentation in the building and you get vibrations and it's kind of messy. And the architects and our construction firm people we've talked to about this have suggested that's probably not the ideal way to do it for this kind of a building. So we likely would expand in a future building one way for research, the other direction for clinical. So that's sort of in response to the question that came up last time. Happy to answer any further questions on that or anything else about the building if you like.
Thank you. That's
Sure.
great explanation. Thank you for the bottom line here. And in any kind of project like this, you build, planning to build space for users. They seem to decide this issue. And now we're heading back. What interest group, what department is most disappointed because of the reduction in size?
Good question. I would say we don't have anyone who is particularly upset by this. Everybody would like to have more and all that. That's just natural and human. But the people who have developed the plans, who have been working for 3 years now on this, are the people who are the cancer center people. So it's faculty, it's the Roy Jensen, the director of the cancer center. It is our clinical chiefs of the various subspecialties of cancer care and the health system have all been involved in this from the beginning. And they have been fully kind of bought into the idea of a phasing plan. And they get it that we can't do it all at one time. I mean, it's just the reality of our situation and frankly any situation. You know, building a $350 million building is not easy. And in this building, what you're not seeing here and not in those numbers is the clinical part of the building, which is probably as big or slightly bigger than what we're talking about here. So, you know, this is a massive undertaking to do this. And we've had very little pushback to your question from people who are upset about the scale back.
Any of this impact the cancer centers?
Yes. Only in a potential negative way if we don't do this. The National Cancer Institute was very.
The shrinking.
No. Sorry, the Delta does not.
Okay.
But the fact that the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, very clearly told us that in conjunction with the review we just did and the award they gave us of the comprehensive designation, they said you have to get your cancer faculty and research programs, particularly on the university side, consolidated from the 9 buildings or however many it is we're doing now. It is important to them that we do this. And I think they didn't say, and we don't know what they would do if we did not build a building, but there is definitely risk in that if we were not to go forward. But the delta between what we talked about 2 years ago and what we're talking about now, I don't think will be an issue at all. Exactly. Well, that would be the alternative. Okay, gang. Well, we could stick with this other building that will never be built. So which would you prefer? But they're not raising. They're not that close to this. I mean, they know we're working on it, but they're not intimate with the details of the way.
Without being too specific, how does it find?
Very well, I would say at this point. We have been active in philanthropic circles, as I believe you know. We have significant commitments and we're continuing to work on that, and we expect to have significantly more commitments. We have achieved, we've obtained meaningful funding from the federal government. Senator Moran has helped us with federal funding, and we have a commitment for 43, I think it is, $1 million from the federal government. So, you know, I think we feel good. We haven't done it all yet, and it's going to take a significant lift to do it. But we're finding great receptivity from a number of different foundations and other support organizations for big dollar opportunities. So, you know, I feel very optimistic about it. We still have to get it all done.
That money is better you can set up things out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And this is getting, highest level at the university involvement and interest from University of Kansas Medical Center. Obviously, Dr. Smari and I, and Dr. Jensen in particular, are very active with this. Dr. Gerard is very active with this, as I believe you probably know. The health system leadership, Bob Page and Tammy Peterman and others, my colleague there, the CFO of the health system, actively, heavily involved in all of this, along with the clinical people. And our endowment association is actively, heavily involved with it. And Dan Martin, our CEO of endowment, is the lead person on the fundraising for this initiative. So it's getting the highest level of attention. Yeah, it is. Thank you.
We'll probably have the final consent, and we will make the recommendation for the. The question. Yes, but now, but we don't open.
Thank you.
Yeah, we talked, we said we talk about it.
I mean, in my mind, I think the answer to my pretty significant expenditure and pretty significant for that, and I suppose they basically the rest of the world about it. That said, I think the charity were people inside of it. You have time and talk about it or not. I think the discussion we've had now is very illuminating and actually,
Yeah, I leave that obviously to you. But one more thing I might mention for the committee might be interesting. We have at the Med Center, people on my team, and I've been myself quite active in this. We have developed a comprehensive financial model of this building and all the programs that go into it. Very sophisticated, comprehensive financial model and projections. I think we go out to 2050 because this is a long-term thing, and there's a long scaling of research growth and bonding and other things if we ever end up in that kind of arrangement, which I don't know that we will. I hope not, but we wanted to have a long-term perspective. So we have detailed modeling of all of this, including, which the board I think will be interested in at some point, details around what will be required to operate and maintain and keep repairs current on the building, so we don't end up in a deferred maintenance rat hole, 20, 30, 50 years from now. And so our understanding of what it is going to take for the life cycle of the building, not just for the construction of the building, is quite extensive. And the funding plan that I'm putting together for this contemplates funding for all of that, not just the capital cost to get the building out of the ground. And I think, Chad, we started to talk to you about that, and happy to prefer to continue that with you, so you're aware of how we're doing that. But we've taken a real detailed look at it, and I feel really good about our understanding of it from a business and financial point of view. So that was something that we worked on for a couple of years, and I feel very strong that we have a good understanding. So, sure. Well, thank you.
one last question you may want to know, actually, what's your day, your hopeful day, your part of the day, when the day is announced? You got the money to
likely won't be 6 weeks. I don't know what the plan is, honestly, on communication of that. I'm sure we will have interim communications of certain commitments that we achieve that were obtained. I'm not sure what the time frame on that will be. It will. I think it's very likely not to be. We wait until we have the full thing in the can, and then we announce the whole thing. It's likely to be staged over time, and our friends at Endowment will likely kind of lead on that because they know the market and they kind of know the status with all the different people they're talking to, and I'm not sure how they're making it. But the whole, this will be a another year or two of active discussions, I'm pretty sure, to raise the sort of money that we're talking about. And the fundraising, by the way, just to be clear on that, is on behalf of both the university and the health system. So it's not just university, it's combined. So that's how we're approaching it. Thank you. Yeah.
On the side.
Yes. When we're asking to request an amendment to our capital improvement plan for the market swap addition. An increase of 4 million to 5.275 million. The two main ingredients to that cost estimate are, as we looked at the scope of the project, we were looking to utilize some R&R and some capital renewal money to tackle some of the deferred maintenance items in the project, boilers, so things that are inside of the renovation and addition, and taking advantage of that opportunity since we're in there. And then secondly, we just had an escalation of costs and some additions to the projects of $825,000. And so upon approval, we're ready to move forward and start construction and have a completed project June 2024. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And then I think we had a quick conversation, we got called query that is part of the for solving the process of the bank. Right. So
thought it'd be helpful to have a little bit of a timeline, plus also a sense of the market that we're sort of working against. So we originally developed the estimate for the demo of the greenhouse back in August. We worked through the state bidding process. February 2023 is when we bid it originally, hoping to have a narrower time frame for the demolition work during the winter months. We got 0 bids, so then we had to go back out in March, offer a longer construction window. And then that also then inflated the cost a little bit due to work that they're going to have to do to make sure they don't disturb the grounds too much in the gardens area as well. So they're going to be bringing in plating to kind of prevent the heavy equipment from disturbing the grounds there. So we got 1 bid, and obviously then the costs increase. Give you a sense of the tough market, especially in Manhattan right now. We also had the Edwards Hall demolition that we had only again received 1 bid to do the demolition and abatement work. The contractor that received that bid actually figured out that they had severely underestimated the costs of the asbestos abatement and withdrew their contract. So we actually now are going to have to go back out, utilize an on-call abatement firm, and then rebid the demo work as well. So in some ways, we're fighting a pretty tough market in Manhattan, and also then the increased costs of the abatement.
And so big larger issue.
That's a larger issue for us.
Yeah. What prevents you from having more people keep interested?
That's I would my associate vice president for facilities is online, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's the wherever location, honestly. It's a pretty specialized field and activity. So we're going to have to either bring companies in from outside the market to come into Manhattan and do that work.
Okay.
I would comment on that if I might, just to supplement what Ethan is saying. We have recently just signed a contract for a demolition project on our campus, but we had trouble getting contractors to bid and, be seriously interested. And the explanation that we sort of came to was that so many of these firms are so actively involved in construction projects that small demo projects really aren't that attractive when they're already constrained on their capacity. So we got one, but it wasn't easy to get it all done. I would say ours came in, I think we had estimated, and the funding we got from the state through KBOR was, I think in our case, was $750,000, and we got the bid at 742. So a lot of large numbers, we dumb luck, we were right on, so that we were happy with that.
Well, our spiritual goals is 20 now, so. I was asking, all coming around, line to the lot. Needs and ability to do, the way about their ability to set up by.
Hard to get it down, yeah.
So. All right, then that takes it to the discussion. Put it in us.
Well, thank you for entertaining this. This is typically off cycle. We would normally wait until June. But the dean of the School of Business and Associate Dean asked that we could bring this forward. As you can see, it's a price increase, a tuition increase. We haven't had a cohort. This is a cohort program. It's an executive MBA program. The closest program is K-U-N-C for a comparative set, which is actually in results. This program, the reason they went like it early is because they had to go to cohort for fall as opposed to just, and so having the price and being able to do that 3 months earlier is very, very helpful in order to do that. I think the rest of the information is pretty self-explanatory. Program wise, price wise, because I know that it comes with some price. The executive MBA program at 47,000, as you can see on page 54 onto page 55 is very competitive. And again, the next closest program is the UMAC, which is highlighted in 65. And some of the differences in the executive MBA program, of course, it's a cohort program. Everybody starts together. It's an 18-month program. Typically, it's one Saturday session per month, 8 to 5 p.m. So it's a huge program in that aspect. It's mostly marketed to experienced manager level people, business owners as well. Yeah, and an undergraduate degree, 5 years experience, and so it's a different marketplace than just the regular and part-time.
Okay, and then at the 56 of title 2, that's going to be a presentation.
Great, good point, and not surprised.
And then I agree with the first read about so yeah, right now. I think like the process here, this is the first shot. This is a lot of ideas in the sample for so you don't really get anybody or anything else, and then we come back and then say. So sometimes we say, okay, we're talking about this for that while. Now, introduce the idea back. So this is yes, sure. The only thing I might add is in between these two meetings, in between the first and second read, you can make available what we call the 418B forms that provide additional narrative for each project. If there's any questions, typically we not refer to those, but if the they're involved in the okay, so we'll do that. We'll never eat important thing. The 48 degrees. Okay, that. All right. Okay. I think those are our.
Yeah, I would just note for the sensitive committee, he has done quite a bit of analysis of the project. And summation for you that we haven't had previously, video overview. But if you have the option to dive into the heat, if you want to be any more TV, you can go right on the next here. And I think of this as the very first step of the 25 budget cycle. This is the first step. Waiting with that.
Yeah. certainly didn't read this, that name. Very well. How that was. Okay, thank you. Okay, that is the name to the standing order.
I can just be clear that they had, I think, everybody here, who's spoken on projects is certainly provide context around projects that's been made, in general. One thing that I think is interesting to point out, in terms of funding, I think this year we've got some language that helps us with a couple of things. And schools got we have some language that will allow carryover of the FY23 appropriation. I think everybody pointed out and set along the way the challenge to deliver these projects in the current climate and just the effort that takes for planning to that's right. I think that's welcome news. Additionally, on the demolition side, I think there's some language that works out some issues with getting the money distributed to the universities so that they can pay the bills on these projects and ready for this. We also, well, a couple of things everybody's pointing out here today where they're at on the demolition projects. I think there's 2 demolition projects that are complete, completed months and months ago. Last year, and several on the slate this summer and late spring, and then others will take some time. We also note that in the capital plan later that there's several that are in the pipeline, and that some projects moving forward in 50 years will require a while just to kind of get it in chair to vacate the building and tear that down. So it's going to get tougher as time goes on. So you think that strategy representing some little project. Lastly, I just mentioned that we're continuing through this year with our consulting team on facilities database side. We're utilizing them to refine our forms, data management, operating and maintenance costs. Those that are starting to work that out so we have more meaningful representation of those costs for new projects. And then we're on the space utilization side, working with our able research and planning team. Institutionalized so space inventory data we haven't had asked that they can really give us a consider that approach in the future and that would be a good source of information for planning. So really excited about all the collaboration.
Well, Dr. And the ability to talk about the impact we had with this year's program, all the savings associated with that, certainly has been helpful for the future. Great information to work on, particularly appreciate that.
The other comment that I would have is to remind our colleagues at campuses, CFO, our student body representatives, next month we will be looking for the tuition fee proposals and presentations on their process and the background and how we're developing. Once we know what the list, that is we'll work on it.
The other
More serious on here that it can incorporate the introduce. Sure, yeah, we can do that. My name's Porter Wolfram. I'm the outgoing president. It's in the city. Yes, yes, very much.
I'm Jess Bigley. I'm the incoming vice president. My name is Bill Price. I'm the outgoing president of Emporia State. My name is Ashley Serrano. I'm the incoming president of Emporia State. My name is Sophia Dawson, and I'm the incoming vice president at Emporia State.
I'm hearing all I would maybe shut day. You shut it. I'm Thomas Lane, that's for student students at Casey. I have a pleasure to read these questions.
Jeff Morris, I'm vice president for finance at Copyright Community College.
okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right, well, Mark, I have 10 we're done. It's an early arrival, so thank you.